Here we are again in the forest of Aiton, this time next to its emerald pools with an intense core and upper body workout designed to strengthen you for crow pose or just provide an opportunity for you to tone and get some definition in your arms. And of course, your abs will be on fire by the end of this, so get ready to sweat and have some fun. If at times you feel like you can't go on, try to reconnect to your breath, and you might find that you have just a little bit more left in you. With that said, let's get started. Let's begin at the back of the mat. Hands reach up to the sky and come down to heart, taking a moment to center before we begin to wake up the body and work it out. Setting an intention for this practice. You can bring your hands over your heart, maybe connecting to that inner fire, connecting within. What is it that you would like to bring to this practice? And what is it that you would like to leave with after this practice? Breathing in and releasing. Let's bring the hands behind the back, grabbing the fingers, reaching down behind you, looking up, and reaching forward, bringing the forehead to the mat if you can. Hands are reaching up toward the sky, doing a nice shoulder release, and lifting up, reaching back behind the mat, finding a nice back bend. And rolling down again, folding over the thighs, reaching up with the hands toward the sky, and rolling up, stretching behind you, rolling back forward. And let's roll back up, rolling the wrists out. We're going to be using them a lot in this practice, so let's give them some love right now. And then reaching the hands forward, coming into child's pose. Tuck the toes, lift the knees and the hips, and let's walk the dog, bending one knee and then the other. And then finding downward facing dog. Let's roll slowly forward into plank, bend the knees, release back to down dog, and forward to plank. Flowing here, waking up the spine, waking up the joints, getting some nice movement and awakening the muscles throughout the body. Try to be as fluid as you can here. And pausing in downward facing dog. Roll forward to plank and Chaturanga slowly down. Lift up to upward facing dog. Holding here. And lift the hips back to downward facing dog. Roll forward to plank once again. Widen the feet. And let's do 16 shoulder taps. So tapping one shoulder with the opposite hand and then switching to the other. Trying to shift your weight as little as possible. Hold in plank. Bring the feet together. And let's Chaturanga down. upward facing dog, and bending the knees, sitting back into child's pose. Resting here for a moment, feeling how your muscles have woken up. And let's come forward into plank once again. And let's tap the right knee to the right elbow. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and hold in plank. And reach the hips back up into downward facing dog. Coming back to plank, and let's do our taps on the left side, left knee to elbow for 2, 3, 4, 4 more, 6, 7, and 8. Great job. Back to down dog. Hold. And forward to plank. Let's do some mountain climbers. Left knee to chest, right knee to chest. Switching back and forth, bringing the knee as close as you can toward the chest. And back to down dog. Great job. Holding here, breathing in down dog. And forward to plank, chaturanga, upward facing dog, and downward facing dog. And the more we do this downward facing dog, the more you realize that this is not exactly a resting pose. You still have muscles engaging here. And let's bend the knees and step or hop between the hands. Sit down to the mat. Lift your feet up, finding boat pose. If you'd like more of a challenge, try to straighten the legs, reaching the toes up to the sky, or you can just stay with the knees bent. Holding, feeling your abdominals, feeling your hip flexors engaging. And let's tap the toes one at a time down to the mat and lifting back up to boat pose. Tap and tap, switching left foot, right foot, and hold in boat pose. And let's release the back to the mat, stretching to either side, being as long as you can. And let's roll up slowly, coming to forward fold. Might have to shimmy back a little bit. And then roll down slowly and lift up to forward fold. Sit straight up and roll down, coming down as slow as you can through each vertebrae, one at a time to the mat. Moving here through our sit-ups and roll downs, reaching forward and forward fold, rolling down slowly back to the mat, and rolling up again. Sit straight up and roll down. You hold here before you release your back. Engage those muscles, engage the abdominals, and release the back down. Bring the knees into the chest. Quick pause. Bring the hands underneath the glutes. Extend the legs straight out. And let's lift the legs up to the sky. Holding here. And let's do little hip lifts. 3, 4, 5. Lifting the hips up. This is asking a lot of your lower abdominals, a great exercise. Keep lifting. Lift the hips. Toes come above the head just slightly. And then maybe rolling up all the way and over into plow pose. And you can try an ear squeezing pose where you bring your knees to your ears and try to squeeze your head gently, or just stay in plow pose. Your feet don't have to be touching the ground above you. They can just be reaching that way, supporting your lower back with your hands. Let's slowly release the back down to the mat, one vertebrae at a time, going as slowly as you can. Lower the legs slowly, and then bend the knees and roll up to boat pose, and then rolling back onto the shoulders. Just doing a few Navasana rolls here. And on the last one, let's stand up into forward fold, reaching for the backs of the legs, folding from the hips. And let's spread the feet apart to either side of the mat, so wide-legged forward fold. And then step back to bear stance, so hovering the knees above the mat. Hover, 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 hold, and step back to plank. Bring it into bear stance. Hover the knees above the mat, and step back to the hands. A wide-legged forward fold. Bend the knees and step back to bear stance. Step back to plank. Bear stance. And step the feet to the hands. Forward fold. Bend the knees, step back to bear stance. Step back to plank. Back to bear stance. And stepping the feet to the hands. Forward fold. And stepping back to bear stance again, back to plank, back to bear stance, and step the feet toward the hands. Turn the toes outward and try to sit so that your tailbone is pointed down toward the mat into Malasana, or yogic squat. So our elbows are gently pushing into the knees. Then let's stand up and lift and squat down to Malasana. Doing this 10 times. Reaching up, extending through the legs, and squatting down. Really trying to widen the hips as much as you can when you come down into the squat. Reaching up, standing up with power. Feeling the legs strong and powerful. And finally sitting back to Malasana, holding here, maybe swaying side to side, feeling the opening in your hips. You may need to bring the feet a little bit wider. And then let's bring the hands to the mat, lift the hips up, and step back to bear stance again. Holding, stepping back to plank, lifting back to down dog, holding in downward facing dog, breathing here. Always remember to breathe. Lifting up onto the toes, forward to plank, Chaturanga, upward facing dog. And from here, let's tuck the toes under, so still staying in upward facing dog. And now bring your nose to the mat and try to keep your hips in the same level as they are. So we're doing Chaturanga push-ups, 10 of these here, or just as many as you can, because I know that this is a really, really challenging exercise. And when you're ready, untuck the toes for upward facing dog. Pushing into the mat with the hands and lifting the hips up into downward facing dog. Great job. Let's bring the knees to the mat, sitting onto the heels into child's pose. Taking a quick rest. And then come back forward into plank. Come onto the elbows. Lift the hips up into dolphin. And forward to elbow plank and back to dolphin. Moving through this motion back and forward to elbow plank. Really working on the shoulders and the abdomen here. Think strong arms, strong core. You can do this. Pausing in dolphin. Holding. And bring the knees to the mat, sitting back into child's pose. Great job. I know that was a challenge. And let's come forward into plank again. Open into side plank on the right side. And let's dip the hips, doing 8 hip dips here. And on the other side, just 8 more motions with the hips up and down and back to center, coming into plank, Chaturanga, upward facing dog, and downward facing dog. Your arms should be feeling it right now. That's what we want. Let's step or hop the feet toward the hands, forward fold, and then sit back to the mat, bringing the back down to the mat. Bring your knees into the chest and have them touch the backs of your arms, so behind your elbows. We're prepping for crow pose, so our hands are pushing up to the sky, and really try to engage all of your muscles here. We're just getting a feel for this pose before we actually try the balancing part. Just showing your body what the setup is. Let's roll up. And let's sit onto our heels on the mat. We're going to roll out the shoulders. We're going to roll out the wrists again, just bringing some motion into that joint before we practice our crow. Let's lift the hands up to the sky, bring the hands to the mat, and let's set up for our crow pose. So bringing the knees to the triceps or right behind the elbows. And just try maybe lifting one foot at a time, getting the feel for bringing all of your weight into your hands. And if you'd like to, you can move into full crow pose, lifting both feet at the same time, trying to bring your heels close to your glutes, balancing on your hands, looking down at the mat, focusing, and release. Down. Great job. Again, this is a pose that comes with practice, so don't worry about it if you aren't able to do it today. And let's come forward into plank pose, Chaturanga, upward facing dog, and downward facing dog. Holding here, and step or hop between the hands, sit down to the mat. Hands come behind you and lifting up into our reverse tabletop, pushing into the mat through the hands and the feet, and release down, finding seated forward fold. Your hands can come behind your knees, grab onto your ankles, or grab onto your toes, just whatever feels right for you. And let's lift up, coming into seated in the center of your mat. Hands reach up to the sky, and let's reach toward the left side, coming up and reaching toward the right side, just getting a nice side bend here. And back to center, hands come down to the heart, And let's reach the hands up to the sky again and down to the heart. Namaste.